On the softs. We're here. First time on camera. I
Thank
found this the
you.
other day.
Thank you to real quick, our sponsor, Red Bull. I just want to say thank you. Thank you to our sponsor. Not that this is a biased podcast, but okay.
I don't think you can say that to our sponsor.
What? Oh, I thought you guys were CC'd on that email.
But dude, another fantastic race. Red Bull do it again. Red Bull are back. There was for a couple weeks where we were like, oh, Ferrari got a little distance on them. Red Bull might be even a little ahead now.
Yeah, but even still, like I had several small anxiety attacks today. One of which was when Checo was like, "I'm losing power," and they're like, "No, like you're just not in like the toe anymore." And he's like, "No, I'm losing power." I foresaw Max like in like that concrete barrier that they just didn't put padding on because
Oh,
it's super dangerous. I saw him like Silverstone into that thing.
yeah. That for a second there when Checo, I was kind of celebrating a little bit when Checo was like, "I'm losing power." I was like, "Oh, here we go." Well, because I needed that too. I had Carlos Sainz in a parlay today, but in the end, it didn't matter. But they were having a really good battle too. Perez was going to be on the podium if he didn't have that problem.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, go ahead,
Yes.
Jake.
Uh, yeah, I was just gonna say with the car wise, I think it's amazing how quick Red Bull was able to. I don't know what problems they had with the reliability issues, but they've bounced back in such a way that Ferrari really needs to start
Yeah.
bringing upgrades
Well,
now.
the
I mean, it's almost like last year. Red Bull has that amazing straight line speed, and Ferrari's a lot quicker in turns and curves, like Mercedes was. So it's really amazing, and I think it's like a testament to
Genius,
Adrian
man's a
Newey.
genius.
I mean, that man, he can build
yeah.
a race car in his sleep, and it'll be one of the best cars
Dude, he's
So,
like
to ever be on a track. It's disgusting
so
how
I've
good he
been.
is at this job.
Sorry,
You
go
go
ahead.
ahead. Go
I'll
ahead.
just
No.
say real quick. He's like that guy's like in Days of Thunder where he's like building a race car in the garage. And he's like talking to it. And he's like, "Now you're gonna run real." Like that is
It's so crazy because I've been listening to his book. I got the audio book of his book, and he talks about how he doesn't use they'll use AutoCAD to build the car after he hand free draws everything. He doesn't use AutoCAD, so he
wow.
draws everything out. Then he gives it to someone to put into that program, and then they figure it out. So he uses a whiteboard, like a whiteboard that was at school, and that's how he figures out. Yep, this works. This won't work. One
Yeah.
of the things he talks about in his book was about the KERS system, how everyone was put it like behind the engine and whatever, and he decided, well, we're going to put it in the gearbox, and everyone was like, can't do it, you can't do it. He's like, no, we're going to try this, and they did it, and what, 4 straight world championships.
Yeah, I heard Ed DeLuca actually in the collab in AutoCAD on that one. They actually even put Oracle on the side of the car. That was we approached Oracle instead of
Yeah,
yeah.
Gary School District. Honestly, I probably would have paid attention more in those classes had I known that it would apply more to stuff
Yeah.
I would become
Less
interested in.
less Pink Floyd, more like I mean maybe not actually.
Grand Theft Auto on the computer was what I pretty much did in his class.
Yeah. Before we dive into the race, though, let's chat about Andretti in F1. Found out a lot about that this weekend. He
Yes.
seemed to have very confident that he had the funding, and like all the boxes. Like he didn't give out too many details, right? But when they had Christian Horner on, he was like, what did he say? He's like, yeah, like we would like more than welcome you like in the sport and everything. I think from the sounds of it. I mean, I'm just speculating, but that's what we get paid here to do. But like that, like yes from Horner, like I feel like he didn't like talk to the team owners, right? And like that's like the last thing that he's nervous about because like that is prize money that they have to share. Like that is like another car on the grid, right? Like there's a lot that goes into that. But I
It's more
think
money
that
for everyone
yes from
too.
Horner, like when Horner came on, it was like yes, like we'd love to have you. Like I feel like that was the first time he heard that because he seemed to get actually like really happy.
Well, apparently what he was doing too was he was going around to all of the team principals and the managers of the teams and getting them to sign a paper. It looked like it was a paper with signatures where I guess they were all like, yeah, we're totally in favor. The teams were writing off. I mean, they plan on building the facility in August in Indianapolis, which is so cool. Love that. They're going to be
Yeah.
testing. I can't wait. They're going to be
Yeah.
testing cars out in Indy. That's going to be so cool. But
On the broadcast, they were asking Mario, it's like a yes or no questions, like, do you have the money to get in? He's like, yes. Do you have an engine supplier? Yes. And I think it's funny. They asked Mario a question about the money, and he's like, "Yeah, it's $200 million, and
Yeah.
there's a garage spot." And I think that's something that F1, I hope, would in the future look to drop or at least like amend. Like $200 million
Yeah.
to have a stall is absolutely absurd. I mean, that's a rule that Ferrari and Red
Probably.
Bull, Mercedes are
Probably.
pretty big proponents of because they want their money. But at the same time, like we could use a couple more privateer teams. It'd be nice to see just teams come in and out. I mean, they'd be backmarkers, but it's good to have more.
Well, the
drivers
fact that
and
they
more
want to
good
lower the
slots.
cost for everything is why you're going to see like Audi and Porsche want to get into the sport because they want everything to be cheaper. That's why they're not in it now. It's just too expensive. Frank
Yeah,
was
well, I mean,
asking
Audi
me
and
today-
Porsche, like they make shit really cheap cars. I'm sure they don't have the money.
Well, hold on. Porsche Red Bull
Porsche Red Bull
Racing, they're
Racing
going to make
is gonna be an
shitty cheap
amazing
cars.
combination.
Actually,
so.
I had my my one buddy that actually went to the race was at the before the race there was like 9/11 Cup Championship or whatever, and dude, like I mean obviously it's not Formula One, right? But like the racing looked fucking awesome. Like
I mean, that's how the IndyCar race was. What were they, the Mazda cars? They were so loud.
Oh yeah, they had like the Mazda RX-7s racing. There's like
That's
45
where,
of them.
but that's where that news broke that they were gonna at the St. Pete Grand Prix, where he said in an interview with some guy who was like 10,000 followers, but a nice racing page. I can't remember the guy's name. That they had the funding, they have the Renault engines. I guess is where their money's at with who they want to go with. I would have chose Ferrari, but Renault needs another team to supply. So I just hope they get it done. It's something that needs to happen. A true American team because
right.
love Gene Haas, but he hasn't had an American driver sniff that team. So
Yeah. No, and I mean, so and I'm gonna like break your heart with this, right? But you heard how favorably he spoke about like Colin Herta, right?
I hope if Colton Herta ends up in a Red Bull, I will cheer for Red Bull. I want Colton Herta in a car
Well-
so bad. It doesn't matter to me.
Well,
It
I
really
know you
doesn't
said
matter
like
to me.
that McLaren spot is his, so that's why I said I was gonna break your heart because I think it'd be really cool if he did.
Well, no, I said this before. Again, he has a guaranteed spot with Andretti if it doesn't work out with McLaren. I hope it works out with McLaren because I'd rather see him probably competing towards the front. Not saying Andretti isn't capable, but I would imagine the first couple of years in, they're more back. Yeah, it's just going to be
It'll be
hard
rough.
because it's a whole new
Right.
thing. But, dude, I can't. It's not going to be televised, but I can't wait to see some of the stuff that comes out of the test that he does later this year. Him and Pato, man, I think they're ready for it. I love Daniel Ricciardo. It's just he's getting to that age, and it's like McLaren's going to look towards the future, and I just don't think it's with Daniel Ricciardo past these next 2 or so years.
Ricardo hasn't done anything. Like he really hasn't. And I mean, all right, if we're gonna get into the race, like first off, I feel like, and this is what I texted you guys earlier. Like last year, there was a lot of like toxicity, like a lot, like social media, like everything, right? I think today was the first time where I saw like the cool down room, for example, like that's back.
That's great to have back.
But I mean,
That's fantastic.
I mean, moment that comes to mind is when Lewis like threw the hat at Nico and like the cool down room.
That's
and stuff.
great.
Yeah,
Wow.
I feel like that's like perhaps why we didn't see that last year is because like there was a lot of actual hatred. It feels good, like it feels like it's good for the sport that there's like respect and like you saw like Lewis or not Lewis, you saw like Charles and Max after and like they're talking numbers and stuff. Like that's great for the sport, you know.
I think you would have actually saw more of that if they actually showed a cool down room with Lewis and Max last year, because I think a lot of the hatred came from a lot of the hatred obviously was from the fan bases, but it came post the British Grand Prix,
Yeah.
when we realized that the fight was on. Like, this became a real thing, and it was like, I can't be friends with this guy, or even jovial, because he's my rival.
Yeah.
So, again, who knows? It won't happen to the degree as bad as it got last year, where you got, what's his name's father, Max's father, saying that Angelo was giving Lewis drugs, and Lewis fans accusing the Verstappen family of racism, whatever. But
Yeah,
I don't think it won't get that bad. But
Yeah.
there's going to come a time where him and Charles get close, and it won't be, haha, great job there, man. It'll be like, yo, whoa,
Yeah.
you're a little too close to me. It's coming. It's not going to be toxic, but it's going to
Absolutely.
come.
I mean, you have two young drivers that aren't afraid to get their elbows out, right? Like, you have a Red Bull team that's like gaining momentum, getting stronger, clawing back. and you have a Ferrari team that's been working on this product for years. Like it's going to go head to head like that, and they're not going to be best friends. But like to the degree of like, I mean, even what you see on social media, like anything, I mean, the Max and like Lewis fans were just like
it was hatred.
And
Two of the most toxic fan bases in probably sports.
yeah. I mean,
Most of whom were the European side. Us Americans are more, you know.
No,
you know,
I mean,
we're
I got on
classy.
there. I got on there. I was like, cry more, like Max. Like I was really going at it with some Europeans.
Well, I mean, we would argue with each other, but it wasn't like I'm gonna kill you, I hate you. It was more.
Well, I mean,
sucks, I hate you.
you said that to me, not vice versa. No, I think like this race and like the culture of like the season is just shaping up like totally different. Like it's so entertaining to watch. Like that race today, it's like it could be a minor headline, especially to what we've seen last year. Like the amount of events. I mean, I invite you guys to go look at like YouTube and just watch like 2021 season highlights. There's so many moments that like you watch and you're like, oh, I forgot that even happened.
Yeah.
I feel like this race was like it was just it feels like one of those races we're going to look back on and be like that decided a lot. You know what I mean? And Ferrari, like they had a showing. Like they went 2-3. Essentially, the only thing that changed is Max like winning, but Ferrari going 2-3. I mean, it's right there the whole time. And this track again, like in Sector 1, heavily favors Ferrari with all the turns. Like they were 4/10 up at one point, and then Red Bull's trying to fight back for the rest. I get we had that big long straight. But it's interesting to see how, the Red Bull upgrades package, they lost 8 kilograms of weight. They just applied that to Checo's car this week. I think that's a big reason why he could lose that horsepower and still keep up. And two, it's like Ferrari just threw in those upgrade packages. And like Jake was saying, they're slowly iterating more. But like, what happens next week when they're like, I'm fed up with this. Like, let's go 2 iterations up, and they come out with some crazy like party mode.
That's what it's going to be. Because next week is it next week? Is it? Yeah. That's where all the upgrades are coming. That's where everyone's bringing major upgrades. 2 weeks? 2 weeks span? That's where everyone's bringing major upgrades. Mercedes is supposed to bring major upgrades to the floor and more. Red Bull's going to definitely have upgrades. Ferrari's going to have upgrades. So it's going to be interesting to see who pulls away. Someone pulls away. Does it bring the field a little more closer together? I will say, Carlos Sainz, great showing today. Finally. We'd been waiting for that. We've lost AJ.
Yeah, Carlos had a great bounce back race.
Yeah.
His Carlos' last 2 races, he completed 1 racing lap, so this was just a massive week for him to even. I was just hoping he'd be in the points. Thank God he got in the podium. That must be a massive confidence boost.
He stood he's
literally 2 terrible races after signing a 2-year.
He stood no chance at the front. Like right at the beginning when Max was making that move, I had a feeling I was like, Max is going for something here. He's not going to stay behind 2 Ferraris all race. He's so spectacular off the get-go.
It's one of those cases, like last year, everybody thought that Carlos was like, oh, he might be better than Charles and blah, blah, blah. But it's in reality, when Charles has a car that he could drive fast.
Oh, he's levels.
There's different levels of drivers.
Tiers.
Charles, Max, and Lewis. They're a tier of driver that Carlos just isn't at. Maybe he could be
I don't know if Carlos can ever reach
not,
that tier.
They have similar machinery, and he's just
we're
around. I don't think he can. With the car, maybe
he could be really good. He's going to win a race. He's going to win a race this year.
But I don't think
there's a tier. Carlos is in the race winner tier. That's where I think he could be. I think he could be a race winner. But like Lewis, Charles, Max, Lando, possibly George Russell. Those are guys that like are world champion tier. Like those are guys who are going to win world championships if you have the right tools underneath them.
Yeah, I mean, even Christian Horner said this week, he's like, I mean, this is a bit of a hot take. But, he is our sponsor's, principal. So he said, like Lando's, like, the only one in that category with, like, Leclerc and Verstappen, which I don't know if I totally agree with that. But I think, like, those are the young guns, right? Like,
I think what he means is I don't necessarily think he was, like, trying to disrespect anyone. I just think he meant the future of this sport for the next 4 or 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Again, someone else could come into that field. I think George Russell is going to be a really great driver. But right now, those 3 are like the guys that, like Lando, Max, and Charles are like the guys you think are going to win world championships.
Yeah.
Max has already done it.
Yeah,
Charles is in the lead. Those are the guys who are going to be competing for world championships.
Yeah, and speaking
I don't think that's a hot take at all.
No, I mean, you never know who's going to come up in 2 years and be a stud. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The other thing,
for sure.
If we're going to get into the race, one thing that I thought was absolutely hysterical today is, so when Pierre and whoever, like Pierre got hit and then like didn't crash, I texted you guys and I was like, that's the best thing Pierre ever did for Red Bull ever, was not bringing out that safety car.
And then 3 seconds later, he got into a crash.
Boom! I was like, oh my god, that was the only thing we needed. We needed no rain, and we needed just like no safety car, and like have the car not actually blow up when we go like engine 11, position 5, like the party mode of like empty your battery, you know, throw a rod through like the ceiling, like just go. And Pierre still finds a way to almost screw us. Latifi didn't though, so that was a nice little change of pace.
Yeah, it's because he was like 20 seconds behind everybody.
Well, you know, he still competes
He's just
against the
driving
wall.
by himself. I'm
pretty
shocked.
safe,
I'm
I
actually
mean.
shocked that the only really the only accident was just someone like I think he was just Pierre was saying, he literally said right before he got in the accident, he's like, my car won't steer. Came on to the track maybe a little too soon, had that collision. Nobody put it into the wall, which was
No.
what everyone was worried about with this track and the problems. Obviously,
I-
where did Sainz crash? He wanted a safer barrier there. They were like, no, sorry.
Which is insane, right? Because
Which
I think
I
that was like turn 11. He crashed.
yes,
there.
right
and
before
then-
the show.
and then and then Ocon crashed there, and they're both like, that's one of the hardest shunts I've ever taken in my life. And the FIA was like, sorry, we're not
Yeah.
going to do anything about that.
Yeah, well, I mean, there was a company that had their decals there. We're not going to reference that for financial reasons, but no, I mean, like, there's no reason not to have the barrier there. I thought something really bad was going to happen in that chicane, because if you take too much of that first curve, I mean, you're done, and nobody can get around, right? So if you have like a DRS train and somebody takes too much of that, I mean, that's a horrendous wreck. I foresaw that this weekend. Good.
I loved having Formula One in the United States. It was so cool to be able to watch the race at 3:30. That track was horrendous.
Yeah, it was,
It was horrible. It was horrible.
That track
It was
is
horrible.
That is.
I feel like when we're building these things, we shouldn't, even if it's not current drivers testing current cars. We need to have these guys come in, whether it's last year's machines or what Red Bull always does, where they have like the RB7 and they drive it around in cool places. Like, have it bring it to the track and let's see how it does on the track, where these guys can go, yeah, this corner stinks. You need to do something because the cars with our new heavy cars is just not going to work. Maybe put something here. They just throw a track together and they're like, here you go, guys.
Yeah,
have at it.
They had like a 6-year-old crayon, and it's like, okay, like they're
couple of turns, couple of straights. And
They don't.
we're
But like the
good.
thing is, did they like test any sort of car on this track before we got here this weekend? Like the guys, all of them were saying this track is so bad. The surfacing on this track is horrible.
Yep.
Like all of them. Again, the spectacle was very cool. It was cool seeing people appreciate Formula One. Cool seeing Michael Jordan talking to Lewis, Tom Brady. They're all having fun, having a good time. But like, the racing's what should be important, not the spectacle.
the grid walk. Speaking
It
of
was
like
so great. It was so great. Him
That's-
chasing down a tall guy going, Patrick!
Yeah. And then
Patrick.
Serena like doesn't really talk to him, and he's like, "Oh, well, that still went better than normal." And he's just like, "We're like," and then it was so packed, the drivers weren't even there. Like he couldn't even find.
It's like, there's no drivers here. None. There were none there.
It was
Not a
the only
single one.
Lance Stroll. I mean, go figure that. And I also want the audio of when Stroll hit K-Mag. I would love to know what came out of his mouth.
K-Mag definitely wasn't happy.
No,
Definitely was not happy.
Yeah, but for the culture, you're right. It's phenomenal. But I think the thing that hurts us, right? It's like Code is an awesome track. Like, great track.
Code is a fantastic racetrack.
Yeah. But I think what hurts is that, you know, like, you're building these tracks, and it's like, oh, like, let's go to Miami. But, like, put something good together to do that, right? Because, like,
Build a racetrack. Build an actual racetrack. Build a
Right.
real racetrack. Not just, let's put it around the Hard Rock in our parking lot.
Exactly, because European F1 fans are looking at that and they're like, I mean, I don't really care that they're in Miami versus if they're in like the middle of Arkansas. Like the thing is, like, is the track good? Like, is it a solid track to watch? And I think that speaks to exactly what you were saying with the concrete barriers. I mean, that's a 51 and a 56G crash or something like that. And they're not. It's around a turn. Like they're not carrying that much speed. It's not like Silverstone. I
Right.
mean, I just that one baffled me, especially when they could race like 10 miles away from missile attacks in Jeddah and they wouldn't let people leave. I mean,
well, my whole thing too is it's like they want to get popular over here, but why do you want to get popular over here? Do you want to get popular over here so that the Instagram models and the celebrities come to the track and get interested in Formula One, or do you want to attract race fans? Like, who are you trying? What is the audience you're trying? I mean, it's clear what audience they're trying to attract.
Yeah,
They're
Shawn
trying to
Mendes-
attract the spectacle, but like, they're not trying to attract race fans. I like it, but like, someone who likes NASCAR, likes IndyCar, and is used to seeing more action, better tracks, is going to watch that and go, I mean, that was okay, but you had Seb going, I'd much rather race at Road America, which Road America is one of the coolest road courses in this country.
What about
But again,
Watkins?
instead of, do you know how much money could be saved instead of building a whole new track? They go to one of these tracks like Watkins Glen and just upgrade it to a Grade 1 FIA track.
Yep.
Watkins Glen would draw a crowd. Watkins Glen would draw a racing
Phenomenal,
fan crowd.
phenomenal track.
I think, again, the Las Vegas, I think Vegas is going to learn from this. Plus, it's an actual true street course, so they have the built-in excuses with the roads. Wasn't a street course. This was built in a parking lot. There was no excuse for the track being this bad. None. Zero. I hope we get to a point where we go, let's have one spectacle race in Vegas, and if we're going to have 3 races in the United States, let's go race at Indy. Go race at Indy. Go race at Road America. Go race at Watkins Glen. Go race at a real racetrack that showcases real American racing.
Yeah, and I mean, like that's the thing is, like earlier, like so we were saying they had the 911 Cup race, they had like Formula W, right? So like all that goes to like the ingraining of that racing line, right?
Right.
That's what you hear people talk about all the time. It's like cars are getting faster and faster on even slower tires or whatever, just because that racing line is there. Overnight, it rained horrendously there. Like the track was dry against Miami, but like that erodes a ton of that rubber. And I'm curious to see, like, if you ran those cars again tomorrow, right? How much faster would they actually be with that rubber and that racing line from 60 laps in that track?
Well, they ran the W Series earlier in the morning before the race. I know it rained a little bit, but Alex Albon said they couldn't race side by side. Like there were at this track, as soon as you got off the racing line, it was a disaster. The track was so slippery. There's a way to do it here to get it popular, to attract that, fancy crowd that you have, but also do the racing right.
Yeah.
Like I enjoyed the race. It was fun, especially when the chaos happened. I could see when the drivers are telling you that sucked, it was stupid. Perhaps listen to them. Perhaps listen to them.
That's what I'm saying. Is there voicing concerns over like Max heard missile strikes over like he's like, what does that sound? And like they wouldn't even let them do that. So I can, you know what I mean? Like let's start there and then worry about everything else. I get that you want to make an entry to the U.S., but like it's just not the way to do it. You know what I mean? Like
Another thing that.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Another thing that Max said is he's like, we need to start being involved in the conversation when they develop these racetracks. That the Grand Prix Drivers Association needs to be involved in like the planning to see these layouts. To be like, that corner isn't going to work. 11 through 16 is a very cool corner if the cars were, way lighter.
But it's not even that. It's, can we get a safety barrier? Can we not drive into concrete?
Mm-hmm.
Like they're not making crazy concern. Like it's not like we need to redo the track in a day. It's like, can we get like Tech Pro there so like nobody dies? And like that, it's not. I don't know.
Well, they kept having to repave the track. They repaved part of the track between FP2 and FP3, and it was a disaster. It was a disaster.
Yep. It was a totally different surface than like what they like. You could distinctly tell. Anyway,
a couple of things.
Sorry, go ahead.
Obviously, from your perspectives, Mercedes again. From my perspective, I saw FP2 and I was like, "Oh yeah, we're here." 1 and 4, I was like really excited, and the pace that again, it wasn't like all FP2. Like George Russell had a decent pace in that session, and then come FP3, it was a disaster. Come qualifying, absolute disaster. I don't understand it. I don't get it.
The strategy was there. Nobody knew how the hard tires were going to perform. Laps 1 through 20 was just not even close to the window. And then all of a sudden, just opened right up. And even on the radio, Russell called it. He's like, let's wait for a safety car to pit. Like, strategy was perfect. And I think that data as well, like, I think I texted you guys, like, at Red Bull, like, because our decision was we have, 2 pairs of new mediums, while Ferrari only had, like, 1 of the new tires left, and they had 2 hards. Like Russell running those 28 laps or whatever it was on those hards, like that's data that we should have 100%, like that's exactly what you want to look at, especially like Red Bull is very, familiar with Mercedes strategies and their procedures. I think like that strategy was extremely impressive, especially from a young driver to hold composure of like, hey, you're going to fall really bad for 15 laps, and then your tires are going to get in the window, and you're going to have more grip than anybody out there. And then going to race day, and you're the only one, being able to keep that composure, I think, speaks a lot to like George Russell, where he's at mentally.
Well, he bet on himself. He knew that there was going to be a safety car.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying, right? Like for a young
Bet on himself.
driver,
He just knew. He's like, there's going to be a safety car here. This will play into my favor. If it doesn't, and I pit, I finish 10th or 9th, whatever. But if this strategy works out, I finish 5th. Another top 5 performance for him. And another thing I want to get out there. Lewis Hamilton fans, I love you guys. There's no picking favorites there. There was no, how come they prioritized George's strategy over Lewis's? Lewis had already pit. He already pit. They gave him the option to pit, and he made the right choice by not pitting. That was the right choice. George had to pit there. He hadn't had his stop yet. So if he had to pit. That was his stop. That was the strategy they planned for. Again, if Lewis decided to run the hards early in the race, he could have also been on that same strategy, but that's not what they decided to go with. He finished 6th. Again, he didn't finish 6th because, he did poorly. It's just the way the strategies played out. He finished 6th. It was maximum points for what that team could achieve right now. It was 5th and 6th. That's good points for the team. Lewis isn't fighting for a world championship, so it doesn't really necessarily matter if he's finishing ahead of George. There's nothing Lewis has to prove.
But that's
7-time world championship. George is the one who needs his confidence because in 3 years, Lewis won't be here. George will. And if you're a fan of Mercedes, you want to see George performing well.
Yeah, and I forget what I was going to say. I don't know. I think the interesting thing. Well, that was Russell's worst finish this season, correct?
I think it's been 4th or 5th all season.
Yeah, 5. Yeah, he's
Yeah.
been 3, 4, 5.
I was hoping that we got to a point of where we heard team orders, and that would tell us exactly where Mercedes heads at.
You're not going to see that, though, because if it was competing for a championship, they're going to go with whatever driver's leading the championship. So, like, I still think to this, if Lewis was being an asshole, not letting him buy, they would have ordered him buy. Now, it's up to him whether he follows those team orders. But listen, they raced. There were no team orders. They did their little racing. They were, pushed each other off. It was fun.
That was fun to watch.
Right.
George was always going to win that battle.
But like aside from championship, at what point are you like, we need to bring 2 cars home? Like we've had issues all year. So like that's what I'm saying. Like orders from that of like, hey, Lewis, stop racing, or like just any sort of. I feel like that just gives us a lot of insight into where Mercedes sees the future.
Again, I don't necessarily think Mercedes is going to be challenging for the championship, like drivers wise. But who knows if they put a good car together, maybe later on in the season.
Yeah.
The constructors' championship matters. They're 3rd. You want to be 3rd. That's more money for them. That's where the money is. That's more, the win with the money, obviously. But again, you also thinking about next year. If you do have a good car, you don't want to drive a garage too far down the pit lane. You want to be as close to the initial coming into the pit lane as possible. You got to think about those things. I understand that's like a little far off, but Mercedes can't think about what driver they want to finish ahead. They're not competing for that championship. You're trying to do as well as you can and pick up as many points, and they did that. They finished 5th and 6th. That's their maximum right now. They're the 3rd best team. They finished in the 3rd best 5 and 6 slots. We should be happy. We shouldn't be discussing, Lewis is being betrayed. This and that. No.
So to that point, like
I won't hear it. It's ridiculous.
When do you put Lewis out to pasture then?
I don't think you put Lewis out to.
I mean, I would
never.
say never.
Again, if he's not.
But that plays into team orders, though, does it not? Like, who do you want experience in that position then? And, like, that's what I'm saying is any sort of like inkling of anything that was given. I mean, nothing was right, but anything like that would tell us like what are the meetings behind closed doors like. You know what I mean?
See, I think they're good. Again, I think another thing people are forgetting. Who was George's idol when he was a kid?
Mm-hmm.
It was Lewis. And Lewis Hamilton is not, again, when him and Nico were going at it.
Wait, who does he race for?
Well, but again, like I'm just saying, like that's. I'm sure he had other driving idols too, but like when he was growing up, that was a guy who was winning races. So I just think, on a serious note, I lost my train of thought there. I think they have probably a again, him and Valtteri were friends, regardless of what anyone wants to say. I know the little beef. They were friends. I think he learned from the George thing. I know he obviously he wants to be a world champion still. Lewis totally does, but I also think he knows that part of his job now is to bring along the future of this team. But to be there for George, to help George. I think they get along. I don't think there's a beef problem. I don't think Lewis feels slighted. Obviously, it's gonna bother him that George is beating him, but the new overthrows the old, man. That's how it happens. One day.
Absolutely.
In a year or two, Lewis is going to retire. It's coming. And George is going to be the guy in that team. And for him to be beating Lewis Hamilton, I like that. I like the side of that. Obviously, I want Lewis to be competing at the front. He's my guy, but I also want to see George do good.
Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely. So I guess, all right, so let's go around one, main takeaways from the race, and what's the number one thing to watch moving forward?
Mine would be Red Bull and Ferrari are neck and neck. I'm still not sure who has the better car, but I do know that Red Bull has the better driver. Charles is good. I think he has the potential to be as good as Max. Max has got that mind. Max is so smart. Max has been there, done that. Charles still gets a little, sketchy in certain situations. He did very good today. He didn't press the issue. He knew that he needed to come home with points, and he did that. So my main takeaway would be it's them two for this World Championship, and it's going to be great. I can't wait to see the next two races.
Yeah. So as a Red Bull fan, I mean, I agree with that. I'm interested to see how far Leclerc progresses over the year, right? Because as he gets more comfy up there fighting with Max, he made one mistake and went too deep in a turn, right? And you never know how that would have played into DRS towards the end. I'm interested to see how far he progresses because that's the main instrument that Ferrari needs, right? They have the car, they have everything else. Red Bull, for me, another, I'm still hesitant on the reliability issues, right? I know, this is we DNF and then we were okay, we DNF, we were okay. This is the second week where we're okay in a row, but even still, Checo still has issues, right? So I'm interested to see how pervasive that is. Obviously, super hot race, so glad the car held up as good as it did, especially in that engine 11 mode, which is we're balls to the wall there. That's a good thing, but I would like it if hey, how about no cars had issues like the other competitors? You know what I mean? So I think that's the main thing moving forward, and then also let's see what those upgrade packages look like. Let's see what else Ferrari has in their back pocket because that's been the question all year. I'm happy with our upgrades. Let's see what else we can do, but. Yeah, what about you, Jake?
I'd like to jump on both your points, really, between Ferrari and Red Bull. It's the whole classicness of F1 is you spend the most money and it's the most technologically advanced racing in the world, and that's what it's going to be this year. Is both these teams brought amazing cars the first couple of weeks, and now it's going to be who can spend money, who can develop. So really, it's Red Bull brought their development package this weekend. Ferrari will next weekend for Monaco too. I'm assuming. It's just going to be one of those, Red Bull throws a haymaker, Ferrari comes back and throws a haymaker. They're just going to trade blows, I think, the whole season on who brings the best packages and who brings the best upgrades. It's going to be one of those deals that this will probably go down to the final weeks of the season. It's going to be Leclerc and Max. Max might have a faster car one week, Leclerc the next week, who makes least mistakes. It's going to be a classic F1 season, really. It's amazing to watch so far.
It's been a great year.
It has.
Absolutely fantastic. There is one more thing before we scoot out of here that I charted down from one of the, I think it was FP2, actually FP3, when they had Pablo Montoya in the group. And they were talking about DRS in this new age and timed DRS and with the push to pass. And I thought that would be a really good thing where, instead of just always having DRS 1 second behind the car in front of you, if we did a time system, because push to pass in IndyCar, I know me and Jake watch it all the time. I'm sure you watch it too, AJ. Push to pass in IndyCar is fantastic. Yeah. It's so fantastic because you have to. It's a strategy. It's don't use too much because you can use it to defend and attack. So I think that would be really cool if we could see a battle between Max and Charles where they both have DRS, and then what if one of them runs out of it? Scoots right by. The other one's attacking. The one in front still has it and just scoots away. I think that's something that they should look into because we need to keep DRS. It helps these cars pass. But I think sometimes on some of the tracks, especially where we have these long straights, it becomes too easy.
Yeah.
It's
The
and
other
there's-
thing, these cars are built with
To pass
DRS
now.
in mind, right? So
Right.
like I think that'd be something interesting for like that next iteration, just because like things like wheel size, like these cars are built like with that DRS like a staple, right, of the sport. I think that'd be very interesting to see what they can do because that calls in like a lot more power from the battery, right? So even like what if you hook that up? You give unlimited, but you hook it up to ERS and see who can save their battery instead of saying you have X amount of times to use it. Like who can say like recharge their battery, like play that in like to the strategy like tires or like whatever. I think that'd be like interesting to see how drivers manage that.
Yeah, because you'd have to again. It'd be something you had to manage. It's not just something you're guaranteed to have
Right.
to attack the car ahead of you. It's like I only have 30 seconds of DRS left. Should we wait to attack later in the race? Honestly, I think that's something they are going to look into because it's a very good idea.
Yeah. No, I think that's great.
Yeah, it would definitely it would shake a lot of the standings. Like you think about some drivers that are so good at defensive driving, like Fernando.
That's what I
Alonso.
mean.
You get some of these races, like Qatar. He gets up in a third or fourth place in like Hungary last year. He's in what was he, fourth or fifth? You give him the ability to have his car be faster, even though it's not a fast car. You get so many drivers that deserve higher places, but the only get
DRS.
passed by DRS. It really changes things up. It's amazing what it could do if they were allowed to just let some drivers use it to defend. I mean, even today, you saw how fast Max was with his with DRS open on the.
I
Red
think
Bull.
too,
And then
with undercutting and stuff like that, where okay, you're in the lead, you come back out, you pit, you come back out fifth. You got cars ahead of you. You might now in today's racing, if you're within a second ahead of them, you just clear them with the DRS. At this, with the time DRS, you're like, do I really want to use it here to get past fourth or fifth, or do I want to let this play out more until they pit? So then you have to think about it. And again, I don't know what how many seconds you would use or whatever. I can't even remember how long IndyCar uses it. Is it like 200 seconds or something like that? I think that's what it is.
yeah, it's
but
right around,
it would be really interesting.
200 or like 180 or something like that.
Right. Mm-hmm. I think it just
Yeah, especially with today,
that's something
like,
to
you
think
saw how
about.
Fast, you saw how fast the Red Bull was in the straight line speed, so it's one of those deals that, say Ferrari does catch up with power and Max and Charles are even, they play DRS games in most of the race, really. So does Charles burn it all in the beginning or try and set like a 2 or 3 second gap, and does Max wait till the end to push back, vice versa?
Right.
You could then have guys go in 3-stop strategies or 2 stops, run
Well, yeah.
soft hards and then run the last section of the race on softs with all your DRS and just run wide open.
That's
and
another
try
thing.
And, make up those gaps like Lewis has done and Max has done. It could really
That's
change
another
the
thing,
whole sport around if they were to just tinker with this idea.
Well, another thing he brought back too, which they'll never do, but it was funny to think about, was if they brought back refueling the cars.
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
during the race. But that's a real thing. Like when I watch some of the older races, the Ferraris would always stagger the strategies, put Rubens in with less fuel, let him get out there and test how the car would be with less fuel, and then they come in and do the different strategies, and you'd have 3 stop strategies, you'd have 2 stop strategies. I mean, it would always end with Ferrari winning, but it was still really cool. And that's another interesting thing. They'll never do it now because I think it's a lot safer to not refuel the cars.
Yeah.
But you don't want to end up in a
fire.
yeah, you don't want to be caught up in a flame like Jos Verstappen. But yeah, it's the racing this year is so much more improved with these cars. These cars are so cool.
Yeah.
I love them. And
Yeah.
I can't wait for the rest of the season. It's this
Yeah.
month, dude. I can't wait. May 29th. Oh, I can't wait.
Great month for motorsports.
Oh, great month for motorsports.
All right, y'all.
On the softs. Thank you very much for joining us.